Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. I'm hoping you guys are all having a fantastic day. So as you can tell by the title, yep, it does seem that a winter storm is likely at this point. You see, I have pulled up right here the European model. Again, I want to mention and emphasize that there are still a lot of differences between each model. Some models show the snow in different areas or different amounts of it or completely different structures to the snow bands, if you will. So, but this is one model, and it does appear that there has been a more concise agreement across the models in the past 1 to 2 days. It seems that the heaviest snowfall will probably fall anywhere from northern Utah, eastern Idaho, northern Colorado, central, really much of Wyoming, or into southern Montana. And it's really this area that the European portrays. Again, I'll show you the different scenarios. So it's definitely a winter storm. I call it a winter storm not because it's occurring during the winter, because it's fall, but because of the precipitation types it's bringing, and that's how a winter storm is classified. I could call it a snowstorm, winter storm, whatever. Those two terms are pretty synonymous. So yeah, before we get into this, if you guys would like to support this channel, you can do so by subscribing. I'm not begging for your subscriptions. It's just a reminder that if you do like this channel after you watch this video, or this isn't your first video, it's a good thing to subscribe. It really helps out. Obviously, you don't have to. Liking the video also helps, and if you have any comments or concerns, leave them down below. Otherwise, let's start talking about this because there's quite a bit of information to go over. And I do want to say that it's still a pretty decent way out. Approximately 120 to 130 hours, depending on which model you look at. And I say that because different models have different timing, if you will, of this system. So right now what we have going on across the western United States isn't anything to do with that snowstorm. If you live across Wyoming, Idaho, Nevada, Utah, you may be seeing some rain, and that is because that's more of the rainstorm. It's not the snowstorm, it's just the system prior to it, and that's why it's producing a lot of rain, not snow, because that's what it's supposed to do. And you can see that does bring some snow into this Sierra Nevada, much of northern Nevada, into northern Arizona, Utah. And I do want to say that there is a pretty decent rain event across the eastern United States into the central United States. And I actually want to point out something really cool. The pattern that we are in right now is actually called a Rex pattern. Doesn't happen too often, but it's basically where two high pressures, two low pressures create a funneling of anything that kind of from the south directly to the north across at least the eastern portion of the United States. And if you were to take a look at the model run from a few days prior, you could see that all of this lifted to the north. And theoretically, if this pattern were not to change, this could just glide all the way into the Arctic, just straight to the north. But you could see that there is a pattern change. We do start seeing more of a flow from the southeast to the northeast, and that's why that kind of disrupts it. But yes, that's called a Rex pattern, when everything kind of from the south just veers straight to the north. So if there were a hurricane to occur right now, that would just pass straight to the north because of the pattern we're in right now. That was a little bit of cool facts I thought I would share. And as we push this forward, by the way, in this video I will be focusing more on the west, obviously, because that's where the winter storm will be occurring. I will be talking about the plains where that rain side of that winter storm will be occurring, so I'm not ignoring the northeast. It's just that there isn't really much going on right now that is as worthy as what is going on across the west to talk about. So yes, there will be showers. Michigan, you can see Idaho, Indiana seeing some rain, but look at this right there into this weekend. That is definitely some impressive rain across Utah, Wyoming, Idaho, Montana, and that does move on to the plains. So if you live across North Dakota, South Dakota, northern Minnesota, and you're harvesting or whatnot, if you're a farmer, right, expect some soggy conditions into this weekend. And honestly, you should probably get your harvest in if you can. Obviously, it varies if there even were any things to harvest because of the tough drought. I would recommend to do it before this upcoming weekend because Saturday and Sunday look soggy, and honestly the pattern after that looks equally as soggy. And you can see that's some pretty heavy rain that definitely would bog up some soil and create more of a swamp rather than a farm field. But notice that does bring some showers into the northeast as well from a little stretched out warm front, if you will. And this is where we start seeing that pattern change. So again, this is not the winter storm yet, but it's the beginning of it. It's kind of like the seed of it. And you can see there's a strong cold front that comes through with this trough. That does bring snow into much of Idaho. Obviously, the lowest of the elevations are not going to be cold enough to see snow, but it's not just the highest elevations that will be seeing the snow. It's probably very in favor, if you're to divide the higher elevations and lower elevations in half, it's probably like 3/4 of Idaho will be seeing that that snow from that system, and just the fourth and the lowest area seeing rain. But again, even after that rain or snow occurs, there will be some chilly temperatures. I do want to say, kind of from that cold front of this system, we do see another birthing of a system that could bring some decent to moderate rain across Kansas, Oklahoma. They are in a drought here, so that is good news for them. It may not be enough to really cure anything of that drought, but definitely enough to really wet the soils and create tolerable conditions for the ecology and whatnot. Notice into Illinois, that spreads into Wisconsin, Michigan, and that would be around a Tuesday and Wednesday time frame. However, obviously, what's of note? Well, look, the snow continues across much of southern Montana. Again, this includes probably cities like Bozeman, seeing some pretty good snow out of this Helena, maybe some light to moderate snow amounts. I wouldn't say anything significant. Again, it has trended that snow system just to the south of you with the with the heaviest amounts. And notice that we do have a decent trough. That is some very chilly air, especially for this year where we've had seemingly lack of chilly air thus far. And obviously that does give kind of availability for that storm to drop its snow amounts. And look at this. As he pushes forward, we see this low pressure develop around the Colorado area. So you could call it a Colorado low if you want, which is kind of a technical term for it. A low pressure that develops in the Colorado Rockies. And not much to it. You can see Utah, though, picks up some snow, decent amounts of it. Look at this. Wyoming could be in, really just clobbered by the snow anywhere from late Monday. So this is starting really the first hour of Tuesday. And look, this is now Tuesday morning. This is now Tuesday during the day, right? I mean, there's really no locations in the whole state of Wyoming that aren't seeing the snow, unless you live in an extreme low elevation somewhere. And usually during systems, you see more rain than snow. And of course, I don't really know where that is. But if you do know, then obviously take that in consideration. But again, it seems as most of the state will be seeing the heavy snow. The heaviest obviously falling in the highest elevations. But by heaviest, I mean not like 4 or 5 inches. You could add a 0 to those numbers, 30 to 40 potentially in some, by some models, which may be a bit aggressive. But once this low pressure moves onto onto the plains, off the mountains, really, into late Tuesday, early Wednesday, we start seeing lots of rain. And again, that is good news. These areas have been seeing a drought. Unfortunately, right now, it's not the best time to bring several inches of rain because of how, because of the harvest and whatnot. But, at least for the long term, it's good. And look, it's still snowing across Wyoming into northern Colorado. Exactly. Just a long-term event with very heavy snowfall rates. At this point, this is kind of 24 hours of snow for many locations. And I do want to say that this isn't just some light snow. It's going to be very heavy, potentially falling at several inches per hour, and also with some very strong winds. Yesterday I called the system a blizzard. I don't know if I will today. I still think there are some good conditions. Just until I get more confidence, I just won't. But notice, once the system moves away from the mountains, it stops producing snow. There's just not enough cold air for the plains to see snow. But look at all that heavy rain. That is extremely heavy rain. Very strong winds. Yes, if this was just a bit of a colder pattern, a bit of more cold air to stretch out into the plains, this would have been a snow event for many. And that's what the models showed at the beginning of the week. Some of them did at least. But at this point, most have trended away from that. And I think that's rather reasonable. Notice that the cold front of this storm does stretch out all the way to the Gulf. Some showers, some severe weather potentially across the the coast of Texas and Louisiana. But again, it's a rather weak a cold front for this giant system, and you can see a lot of winds, definitely a lot of winds and a lot of rain. This does move north into Canada, does end up producing some snow into much of Manitoba and far western, I should say, Ontario. Once that passes through, we do see a break in a pattern, and what comes after that is very hard to tell. Some models show a very active pattern, some don't, so at this point, it's just speculation, but it does seem, I would say, that in a very long range, past 240 hours, it seems that the west will remain active. Whether or not it will be a snowstorm, rainstorm, that's yet to be determined. Okay, let's take a look at these snowfall totals. I know you guys probably want to see them. So again, some of these, especially in the higher elevations, will come from that system that is already going on today, mainly a rainstorm for most, but look at those amounts across Wyoming and into portions of northern Utah, northern Colorado. Let me zoom in on this to get a pretty good look at this. Look at that. That is insane. I will show you Montana in just a second. Except this region I selected does cut that off, so that's unfortunate. But look at that. Mountains in southern Colorado potentially picking up maybe even a foot of snow, which again isn't massive for these locations, but it's definitely there. Again, more impressive amounts up here across Wyoming, a broad area of potentially 12 to 24 inches, if you will. The lower elevations, you could see still picking up snow, maybe 2 to 3, 4 inches, but they are still seeing snow. Obviously, not in the double digits or in the 3 to 4 feet range, which some little plateaus and mountain ranges could be seeing. But maybe even Denver picking up a dusting, or maybe even a few inches in areas like Boulder. We'll have to see. And again, this is still a very developing situation, if you will. So a lot of things are yet to be determined. Look at this. Into southern Montana, also decent snowfall, and there will be several inches as far as really central Montana. Idaho also seeing some snow, not as much, but definitely there. So yeah, that's the story from the GFS. And if you think that was a lot of information, well, that's just from one model, unfortunately. So meteorology or the weather community, whatever you want to refer to as, there's a lot of models you have to look at in order to get a good idea of what's to happen. And again, this is the Canadian. It only goes out to 240 hours, but I would say it's a pretty good model in terms of its precip forecast. There's our first system. You can see tomorrow definitely producing a lot of rain. Saturday, very well organized for being constantly teared at by the mountains, as most systems usually are. And just goes to show you how much precip there is available, which is why that snowstorm could be producing so much darn snow. Look, it does spill into North Dakota as the GFS showed, and it does produce that secondary low pressure as the GFS showed, and it does bring that shower activity. So there's some remarkable agreement. It does also bring in that cold front, that chilly air, and look, it starts exploding snow. I would say more snow than what the GFS showed at this given time. Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, Nevada seeing decent snowfall amounts. And look, the Canadian kind of mingles this system in the mountains for a bit longer than what the GFS does. At this point, the GFS started showing the system already starting to make an exit towards Colorado. The Canadian is just having a blast with this system, and it's just tossing it around in between all the mountain slope. And while it does that, it produces a lot of snow. Look at that. Way more snow for Nevada, according to this, and Utah, and really much of Montana. That is way more snow. Now, the Canadian does give it a kick in the butt at around the Tuesday, late Tuesday, early Wednesday time frame, and you can see there isn't as much snow from Wyoming. It just gives a little brief thud of maybe 1 to 2 inches, and it centers it more across Montana into portions of Utah, Nevada, right earlier on. But by Wednesday, it does still move it on into the plains, if you will, and it does produce a lot of rain. But you can see that it's more northernly oriented and produces more snow for a lot of Montana and southern Canada versus eastern Wyoming and whatnot. But yeah, definitely an interesting scenario. And look, it still shows some snow across Utah, Nevada, following that system, which is kind of just from moisture from the Pacific Ocean. So yeah, lingers definitely a bit more cold air behind it, and it does develop a stronger cold front. So there are some remarkable differences. Let's take a look at that total snowfall. And yes, notice it centers a lot of it away from Wyoming. There will be still areas, especially the higher elevations, that see decent amounts. But look, Nevada, potentially over 6 inches for most of the northern half. Sierra Nevada seeing quite a bit, and yes, central Montana getting clobbered with potentially over 2 feet for a good area of real estate. I do want to show you the precipitation. This is including rainfall, and let's take a look at this. You can see it does show a lot of, obviously, rain, if you will, if you were to melt that snow, which is good. Not so much for the Wyoming, southeastern Wyoming, or eastern Colorado, but also a lot for the plains. And just to compare, this is what the GFS showed, which you could see not as much for Montana, a lot more for Wyoming. It just takes its axis and shifts it to the south and east, and also just less of it. If you recall what I just showed you a few seconds ago, there was more purple colors from the Canadian, which shows 2 inches, versus the GFS shows more of an inch to an inch and a half, but just still a good event, especially in snowfall. But yeah, we'll have to see. Now let's take a look at a third model, and this is the European. I already have the snowfall totals open, so we might as well take a look at it. Nevada, not as much as what the Canadian, more of what the GFS shows. Decent amounts for Utah, pretty good amounts for northern Colorado. Again, takes it up towards the central half of Montana, but it doesn't show what the Canadian shows. And look at all these amounts across Wyoming. Yes, in the lower elevations, you can see right there 2 to 3 inches, which is still a decent bit. But across the higher elevations, where it can fall, with more ease, it falls pretty heavily. Again, potentially up to 20 to 30 inches, which sounds like it's so Sounds so funny just tossing around those big numbers, but with that system, it seems very possible. So there's our first storm dropping that rain across the west, the Rockies. It does develop that secondary system. This is the European again. It does show that pattern change. That cold front, it explodes it, not as much as a Canadian does across Nevada. It does bring a lot of snow into Wyoming, Utah, northern Colorado. It keeps the system around for a while. In the mountains, it does eventually break it out to the plains. A strong cold front, a very strong backside, strong winds, and very heavy rain as it shifts to the north and weakens. So with a scenario like this, it favors more of what the GFS was showing rather than a Canadian. This is estimating 10 to 1 ratios, which some of these may be a bit lower because it will be very wet snow. For the higher elevations, I would say this is more accurate because it's colder, so the snow is more fluffier, if you will. And yeah, a lot of snow. And in terms of total precipitation, this is including really snow and rain just melted. You can see across the plains, there's going to be a lot of rain from this, to say the least. And across Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, obviously, in snowfall amounts, there could be quite a bit as well. Look at what it has there for the Black Hills, 7 to 8 inches potentially of rainfall. So really, some of that would fall as snow, and because the Black Hills usually see more snowfall amounts. And yeah, right there you could see up to 15, but not all of that. Some of that would fall as rain initially, at least. So yes, that's all the models I want to show you. It is a growing threat, I would say, but I still want to show you the ensemble. I've been doing this for the past really week at now. Maybe not a week, but past few days, and I show you each model from the European ensemble, which you could see an ensemble is made up of many models. This one in particular is 50, so it's a good representation. As I mentioned at the beginning, meteorologists or hobbyists, amateurs, they look at what kind of many models show and trying to make an opinion off of that. And again, this is 51, so it gives us a good look. So again, you can see many favor a system like this, some don't, and you can see that kind of confuses the story because, which one's right? Is it something like this or something like that? But as we push this forward, you can see more are showing snow centered across the Wyoming area, Colorado. Some bring it a bit further towards the north, but again, I would agree at this point that what the European and the GFS showed are more likely to happen than what this model showed, which, if you recall, this model, the Canadian, showed it more across the central Montana area. I do think that there could be some leniency, right, bringing that snow a bit to the north, but most you could see some show it even further towards the south and east, and most just keep it across the Wyoming, Colorado, with obviously some differences. But the Canadian definitely an outlier when showing that snowfall that far to the north. You can see this one brings it further to the north, but it's to the east at the same time. The Black Hills maxing out in terms of snowfall with this scenario up to 40 inches, which again I think is a bit over exaggerated. But you can see this one's very similar. This one again favors somewhat kind of in between the GFS and Canadian scenario. This one really focuses the southwestern Montana and northeastern Idaho area, but you can see it's definitely way more look at that one. That's definitely a weird scenario. Definitely a lot more agreement than what we saw just even a few days ago when it showed so many different varieties, right? That's why we were kind of just trying to figure out whether or not it will occur. At this point, it seems likely to occur. It's just where. And you have models like this, which seem unlikely, but you have also models like this that show the same area as, say, a model like this, but just obviously way more in this case, which again I think is on a higher side of things. Probably a scenario like this, or maybe not this far to the east, but amounts ranging up probably up to a foot, maybe in the lower kind of moderate elevations, while the highest would probably see a few feet. And again, you can see that there's actually quite a few that bring it out, kind of jut it out into Nebraska. We'll have to wait and see. I don't really see it happening, but there's a lot of things I don't see, so it's a potential. And you can see, though, there's a lot more consistency than what we saw a few days ago, right? I mean, as I play these models, there's only a few that kind of disperse this system. Usually there, and you can see there are still a few that show a storm bright, but further towards the north. So again, it's just a matter of placement, timing exactly. Let me run through these models. You can see there was really two models right there that showed that jutting out into the plains. There's another one that shows that. It's definitely a possibility, especially after looking at how many ensembles do that. There are still a few that really show a system, right, a pattern change, but really not a conglomerate of precipitation of snow. It's just more of this higher elevation snow that's extremely maximized on a magnitude scale. There's another scenario. There's one that brings it really more into Colorado, keeping the snowfall amounts a bit lighter. And there's a more widespread event, kind of what the Canadian shows, just with a bit more of a southern twist. Look at this one. That would bring cities like North Platte potentially seeing a foot of snow, which I would say is unlikely. but it's a possibility. And again, this doesn't really look like a snowstorm, right? I mean, you can tell there's a lot of snow occurring, but it seems like it's kind of towards the higher elevations, and it is somewhat, but I kind of want to play it out and show you that even with a scenario like that, which doesn't show a large area of snow, it's still a pretty big system that brings that. Okay, let's go to the EPS members, and I always do this with one model on each video that piques my interest, and let's take a look at it. So this is a 51 model, run 50. This only goes out to 138 hours though, the placement of this precipitation type radar, so we'll see if this encompasses that system. I don't know why they're running a bit delayed, these models, but you can see right there, it starts developing that snow across Nevada, Idaho, definitely some decent amounts. And unfortunately, I won't be able to show you the whole system because it cuts us off at 132 hours. But you can still see that it's starting to form a large system, large snow, heavy snow, I should say. Let's see if a different weather model has more time. No, for some reason, they're still a bit late. But yeah, I mean, you can see this one is one of the scenarios that brings that up into Nebraska. Whether or not that happens, I just don't think there's enough cold air for this. If a scenario were like this to happen, I would say this would be falling as rain. And I wouldn't say that it's going to be a snowstorm further towards the east, more of just a rainstorm that's further towards the east, not allowing a snowstorm to occur. I may be wrong, but again, based off the recent model runs, it's favoring further towards the west, and also, again, favoring not as much cold air that is kind of possible for this area to occur. That snowfall that far to the east, that is. So we'll have to wait and see, though. You know, it's a possibility that maybe it's not this far out, but it takes a shift further towards the sorry about that. Takes a shift further towards the east, so you know, maybe just by even 10 to 30 miles, it makes a difference, or north south. We'll have to see. A lot of details still yet to be pinned down, but that's the whole fun of weather, in my opinion. The winter storm. I'm glad that it's occurring because I've been on this system for over a week. It would be kind of a shame if it just stopped showing, right? So my credibility would take a hit, but you know, I did have some reason in the first place to start talking about it that far out. Okay, that's basically it, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you all on the next episode. See ya. Bye.